Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to get the number guess program working. I've already gone ahead and set up my interface, but I'll just kind of talk about it a little bit. This is just a regular form. I've changed the text property for the form to say number guess. I've added a text box to the form, and I've set the read-only property to be true, and that means that the user can't type and delete stuff out of here. And I've also set its multi-line property to be true because I want to display more than one line of text in here. And then I have another, I have a text box right here. This is going to be where the player enters the guess, and I've renamed it to be guess box. This is guess box. This is response box up here. And then we've got a button that the player is going to click on to enter the guess. So that's kind of all we really need to get our interface going. Now, to get to the code here, I'm going to double click on the button, and I'm going to zoom in here a bit so you can see what's going on. So what I need in this, what do I need to do here? This form right here, this class form1, this defines the form, like all the data that we're going to add and all the functions that we're going to have for form1, which is this thing, live in this thing. So anything we're going to do is going to be between these squiggly braces. So let's add a number. This is going to be the computer's guess, and I will call it, let's see, I'll just call it computer guess. That's what I'll call it, computer guess. Okay, and I'm just going to, I'll set it to 0 for now, but I'm going to change it in a second. And what else am I going to need? I'm going to have a function that picks a random number. So I'll call this pick number. I could call it, guess or choose number or something. I'm going to call it pick number, not picker number. Pick number. There we go. And I've still spelled that wrong. So what I've created here is a function called pick number, and it returns nothing. Don't really worry about that yet. So a function is a piece of code that has a name on it that does something. And in that code, well, what's it going to do? It's going to set the computer guess to a random number. So to do that, I need to use the random class. There's a class called random, and I'll call my thing R. I could call it anything I want. Equals new random. There you go. So I've now created a new object to generate random numbers for me. Well, how do I actually get it to generate a random number? I use its next function. The next function in the random class returns you a random number. So I will say computer guess equals r.next, and then I have to supply the range of numbers that I want. So if I want a number between 1 and 100, I have to say 1 and 101, because it'll return me a number up to the second number, but not including the second number. So this will give me a number 1. It could give me 50. It could give me 100. It's not going to give me 101 though. This specifies the upper boundary. Okay, so that's all it is. Just 2 lines of code. I'll put a comment here that explains what this function does. Sets the computer's guess to a random number. There we go. Alright, so what else do we need? I think that might be all for as far as functions are concerned. So where am I going to use this function? Well, I'm going to use this in form1 right here. So after initialize component, I'm going to paste in pick number. So what happens is when the form is created, this function will get called. Notice that the name form1 and form1 here, they match. So every class has a function with its name, and this is what gets called. This is what gets run to create the actual form. So if you want something to be done when an object is created, you put it in this function right after initialize component. So there we go. I've put pick number, and that's going to set the computer's guess to a random number. Well, what else do I have to do? I need to set the text property in the response box. So I'll say response box.text equals on thinking of a number between 1 and 100. And let's see, I'll put another line in here. see if you can guess it. There we go. Now I'm not done with this little bit of code here. What this is going to do is it's going to set the text box's text property to this, so it will display this in the window, and then this following line will display this in the window, so it'll immediately clobber the thing before it. What we want to do is append, and the way to append something is plus equals, right? That is how we do that. So now it's going to say, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100, see if you can guess it. Now I also want these things to appear on different lines, so I'm going to add in a new line character, and the way to do that is /r/n. That stands for carriage return new line, and that goes way back to the days of printers and typewriters and stuff like that. So let's at least run this and see if it works so far. There we go. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100, see if you can guess it. Okay, so now what we need to do is work on our button click function, and so let's do that. Here's the function for the button click. So what I need to do is compare what the player has guessed to the computer's guess. So in order to do that, I need to take the text out of the guess box and convert it to an integer. An integer is just a whole number. So I'm going to create an integer, and I'm going to call it player guess. And what does it equal? Well, what I'm going to do is what I really want to do is say guessbox.text. Now the problem is guessbox.text, this is what the user's typed in. This is text, it's a string, and this is a number. So those are two different things. So I need to convert this text to a number, and the way I can do that is using the convert class. There's a class called convert that has conversion functions in it. So I can say 2, and I want to use int 32. That's a 32-bit integer. I know that's slightly cryptic. So what this will do is it will convert the text that's in the guess box to a 32-bit integer, to a whole number, and we're going to store it in a variable called player guess. So now what we can do is compare the player's guess to the computer's guess. So if the player's guess is too low, which means it's less than the computer's guess, then I'm going to create some squigglies here. So everything, if this is true, if this condition is true, your program will run everything inside these squiggly braces right after it. So what will I do? I'll set the response box.text to your guess is too low. There we go. And what if it's too high? Well, that's going to be else if, that's an otherwise, if the guess is too high, which means greater than, say your guess is too high. Else, now there's only three possibilities. It can be either greater than, less than, or equal to. So the remaining case must be the equal to case. However, if I wanted to actually write it out longhand, it would look like this. If they're equal, when you compare two things, you use a double equal sign. If the computer's guess equals the player's guess, then it will do whatever is in here. But however, we don't actually need this because it's redundant. If it wasn't less than and it wasn't greater than, then it must be equal. So let's just get rid of that. And then we'll say you guessed it. Okay, so if the player guesses the number, then well, then the game is basically over. So what do we want to do in that case? Well, let's ask the player if they want to play again. Now, how do we do that? Well, we've done this before using the message box, right? We created a yes/no message box. So I can say if message box dot show, and now I have to pass in the message, you guessed it, play again, and I need to pass in, I have to specify what text I want along the top of the message box, and I have to say that I want a yes/no style message box. So I can do that by saying message box buttons dot yes/no. So that's saying I want a yes/no message box. And what else? So if I run this message box and it equals dialog result dot yes, then I know the player wants to play again. Otherwise, they don't want to play again. And if they don't want to play again, I can call application.exit, and that'll quit the program. So I'll say yes, play again. So let's take a quick look at that message box thing again. I'm popping up a yes/no message box that says, you guessed it, play again. Along the top, it will say game over, and the message box buttons.yes/no says create a dialog box with a yes and no buttons on it. If the result of that is dialog result.yes, which means if the player clicked the yes button, then we play again. So what does it mean to play again? Well, we have to pick a new number, right? And if we pick a new number, then what we want to do is display this text again, right? I can put this right here. So let's try it out. Let's guess 50. Your guess is too low. All right, let me guess 75. It says it's too low. How about 90? Too low. How about 95? Too high. So it must be between 90 and 95. 93. Too high. 92. I guessed it. You guessed it. Okay. Would you like to play again? So if I click yes, notice it resets the message. And you know what we should do? We should have it clear out the text box after the player guesses. So let's make that little change here. And that's going to be the guess box, I think. Let's see here. The guess box.text. So after the player clicks on the button, let's clear out the text property. But we have to be careful about this. We don't want to clear it before we convert it to an integer. So we can do it after we've converted it to an integer. So how do we set it to empty, an empty string, or we just do it like that? Guess box.text equals empty. What else can we do here? We can also notice we're doing this twice. We've got this text up here, and we've got this text down here. What we could do is take this text, take this stuff here, and let's put it inside the pick number function. So the pick number function will actually reset the message, and now that we've got it in pick number, we can delete it out of here. So we're basically taking something that was in our code twice, and we're putting it in pick number, and now we're only calling it once. So we've cleaned up our program a little bit there, and there we go. Let's run that and see if that's any better. Let's see if you can guess it. Let's pick 90, too high, 50, too low, 70, too low. But you can see it's clearing out the message box, or the guess box, after we make a guess. How about 80? I sort of forgot what I was doing here. Too low, 85, too low. I thought we tried 90 and it was too high. Okay, so let's try 88. Too low, 89. We guessed it. Okay. And click yes. We play again. Okay, so there you go. There's a nice little message box program. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up the packet and just talk a little bit about the flowchart that's in there. The documents, pardon me here, teaching, C#, number guess. Where's our number guess? So I just want to show you the flowchart that's at the end of this project here. So when you see a flowchart like this, anytime you have a diamond, that's going to be a decision, right? That's when you make a decision. There's three possible cases here. The guess is too low, the guess is correct, or the guess is too high. This is going to be a series of if statements or else if statements. Anytime you see a diamond like that, you're going to, if it's one case, do something. If it's another case, do something else. If the third condition is true, do that thing. So anytime you see a diamond, it's going to be a decision. Here's our play again. If they, if they say no, you quit, right? If they say yes, then you go back to the top. And one last thing, notice that in order to get to the play again, we must have gone through the if statements where we do the comparison. So this if statement down here, play again, will actually be inside of this statement. So this thing will have squigglies, and then this stuff down here will be inside the squigglies for everything above it, right? That's true. Like this thing will be inside the squigglies for the whatever if case you got up here. So that is kind of how that works. So just remember that the diamonds are decisions. Decisions are made using if statements. So there you go. Hope you enjoy your little number program. If you have any questions about this, please ask. Thanks for watching.